The Purdue Boilermakers were down by 8 at halftime, but win by 11. Just another day in the Big Ten. The Purdue Boilermakers have won 6 in a row. We're talking about it on the Boilers in the Stands postgame show right now. Welcome back to the Boilers in the Stands post-game show. I am your host, Greg Braggs Jr. Alongside me, as always, is Joe Jackson and Craig Bowers. Appreciate everybody hanging out. Please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We break down Purdue Boilermakers basketball all day, every day, and after every single game, we hit you live with a post-game show. Boilers win 47 points in the second half. Things weren't pretty in the first half. And the big four now come to play. It's been the big three all season long, but over this 6-game winning streak, Caleb Furst has asserted himself into that category of the big four, paying big dividends in this game here against the Washington Huskies as Purdue starts to try to get used to and get acclimated to West Coast trips becoming the norm in Big Ten play. So, hey, life in the Big Ten, you're going to lose some games you shouldn't. And tonight could have been that, Joe, but Purdue says not tonight and really clamps down in the second half and got to work.
Yeah, I think this is a clear example of just that this team is led by players that have gone through it, right? Braden Smith and Loyer, they said at the top of the broadcast, have started, I think, their 92nd straight game together. TKR, Caleb Furst, they've been a part of this. Even Colvin and Heidi, like they were a part of, the last year's run for Colvin. Heidi, I know, was redshirt the year before. And you just saw some of that experience really come through, I think, early in that second half, where there's definitely some little adjustments probably that were made. But I think the biggest thing from first to second half was just that Purdue just settled in and Purdue just played their game. And that was just the biggest thing to me, was that's what happened. And Purdue just, it took 20 minutes, but they got to where they needed to be. They got to where they were able to control the game, didn't let it get out of hand. It's going to be a funny one because, with this being a late game for fans that maybe are listening the next day that didn't watch, or just fans that check the box score in general, they're going to be like, oh, yeah, Purdue won by 11, no big deal. Or I think it was 11, right? Yeah, win by 11, cool, no big deal. And won't have the full picture of they were down 8 at half, and even right. With a couple minutes left, it wasn't full on panic, but it was a little like, hey, Washington's kind of cutting it here. But no, just good overall win from Purdue. You take it on the road, you win by 11, you win by some margin still. Wasn't pretty, but this is another game where Purdue is showing they can still win in different ways right now.
Yeah, 19-point swing from the second half from the first half to end the game. 0 for 6 from three-point land in the first half. They finally hit their first three early in the second half, which kind of sparked their run as players started to settle in. Loyer specifically started to get in on the offensive action. Craig, if I were to tell you from one game on Sunday, you hit 19 threes and then you start the game 0 for 6. I did see you say on Twitter, like, hey, it just comes down to this team knocking down some shots.
Yeah, I thought that was what it was going to be like coming into that second half, but I don't necessarily know that's exactly how it played out. So obviously Purdue hit more shots in the second half. And I think a big part of that was TKR settling in because I credit to Joe. So I've got two main things to talk about. One, credit to Joe, because watching this Washington team just over 2 games, I didn't necessarily think that was any major thing they were going to do to slow Purdue down offensively. And Joe was like, no, they're going to run us off the 3-point line. I was like, man, Illinois got some threes. Michigan got some threes. They just missed those threes. Well, turns out Washington actually does a really nice job of running people off the 3-point line. But Purdue didn't waver. They came into this game committed to getting points in the paint. And at the end of the game, we were up I'm pulling it up right now. Points in the paint for Purdue, we were plus 18. Plus 18 points in the paint. And that wasn't just TKR. That was also Caleb. And Joe and I were talking offline, and I'm going to get to my thoughts on Caleb tonight because I thought that this was his best game of the year. But I really think this game came down to defense. I thought Purdue totally switched in terms of their focus and intensity in that second half. And they force on turnovers tonight. They force 17 turnovers against Washington tonight. And I thought that was huge. But my first shout out tonight, even though I already gave 2 shout outs, my main shout out tonight has to be Purdue alumni that were in that arena. Because if you were watching on, just watching on TV tonight, you could hear every time Purdue made a big play, the crowd was louder for Purdue than when Washington made a big play, which was incredible. And I didn't realize until I had some interaction on Twitter just how big of a contingent there was in that area on the West Coast of Purdue alumni with engineers and tech people and everything else. But multiple people responded and are like, yeah, I'm here. And this is a 40-60 crowd, like 40% Purdue, 60% Washington, whatever, at least. So props to you guys, first of all, for showing up and showing out on the West Coast. And hopefully we do that in Oregon also.
Yeah, I'm sure Washington was they had to have been surprised by that, right? In Chicago, we know there's a lot of Notre Dame fans. In certain cities, you're gonna know there's a contingent of fans. Is the Washington locals aware of this Purdue fan contingent, or was this hit, like a ton of bricks, with them tonight? Because, like you said, all the tech and engineer people, I saw they said Boeing is right down the road. So, you got the aeronauticals there as well. So it's, it was cool to see that. The last few years, Purdue fans have taken over so many different stadiums, but to do it on the West Coast, is something that is, it never gets old to see that kind of scene there. So,
and we've got Purdue fans up late tonight. JB wants a 2-hour show, Greg.
Yeah, well, I'm sure my Midwestern goodbye will take an hour, so don't you worry, JB. These guys are the ones on the East Coast. I'm on the Central Time slot, so I can mess with these guys too. I'm sure they got to get up earlier than me as well for my hard little media job that I have in my cushy little life. No more bricklaying. So appreciate everybody hanging out. Hit that like button. We'll get to some individual breakdowns like we always do here on the show. Talk about some of the team statistics. Joe might even break out the dry erase board if he's so inclined. If you have any questions in the chat, please put those in there. I'll try to highlight as many as I can that brings something to the discussion here. Appreciate everybody here hanging out on a late night here after a Boilers win 6 in a row, gentlemen. 6 in a row as the Big Ten starts to take form here. Michigan State won, a close one right before Purdue played tonight. Illinois blew the doors off of IU last night. Not great things going on for the boys in Bloomington. So it's interesting to see how this is all going to break down. You got Oregon coming up here on Saturday afternoon.
Say that again.
Oregon.
Okay.
I mean, I've been calling it Oregon for so long, and everybody yells at me. Just let me go back to Oregon. Can I go back to Oregon, please?
You do,
but then
it's
going to derail the whole everything.
Huh?
I say Oregon, but everybody else says Oregon. So I'm trying.
I say Oregon.
Oregon.
Or he says Oregon. I'm gone.
Oregani. It's Oregon. It's Oregon. Gun. Oregon. Andy in Colorado says whatever. See what happens. I was trying to avoid it. Then Craig pulls it out of me. I didn't want to talk about this, ladies and gentlemen. But I think we have to go back to where I started the show with Caleb Furst. I don't know where else. I mean, we could talk about Braden. It's like last year, talking about Zach Edey. And it got to a point by the end of the year, we were forgetting to bring up Zach Edey because you take what makes him so special for granted after you see it time and again. So we'll get to Braden Smith in the big three. But I just think Caleb Furst, what did he end with? 15 points, making plays all over, being physical down low, the big and one at the end. That was a big moment in the game. Caleb Furst, as I've now put him in the big four, he's making an impact here in his senior year, Joe. And, if this is what he's going to do the rest of the way, all those questions we had in the first couple months of how they were going to handle the inside and handle the big situation, it seems to be, making a lot more sense nowadays.
That was an accident. But yes, Furst was maybe the best player on the floor today for Purdue. And that's in a game where I can pull up the stats now because you might have been looking for them, Braggs. That's my bad. I had them and just didn't upload them, but they're there up on screen now. It's Furst might have been the best. He had 15 and 6, 4 steals, a block. I know TKR goes for 19, 6 and 3. Braden obviously does his thing, 17, 6 and 5 steals, but just super, super impactful in his minutes and just what he was able to do. Very, very, aggressive. This is probably the most aggressive I feel like I've seen him on the boards. He was pretty good defensively, although, he wasn't matched up with Osborne too much. But even when he was on the perimeter, I thought he was good. He's bringing just a good overall presence to what Purdue has needed, especially on the defensive end. Me and Kraig will have an Oregon preview out on sometime probably tomorrow, if not Friday. It'll be Purdue's toughest task in general against Oregon, and kind of since this lineup changes happened. But you got it right now. You have to feel pretty confident with how Caleb Furst is playing.
Well, let me ask you this. I don't know. Do you have anything to add with the Caleb Furst aspect of it, Kraig, before I start jumping around like a maniac?
I have a lot to add with the Caleb Furst
then
aspect.
Fire away, and I'll just shut up because I was about to go off script because as I was looking at the player breakdowns, it sparked a few questions that I'm going to remember to ask.
I thought Caleb was incredible, and we've seen him primarily so far make his impact with offensive rebounding and maybe a slip or something like that. But I thought they were hunting him a couple times. But Purdue offensively was directly trying to design something with the intention of, if TKR got the ball, what Caleb could do all the TKR. And I don't know how many times or how many points actually came out of that tonight, Joe. But I text Joe and I was like, man, Caleb might have the most advantageous matchup of anybody on the floor tonight, just in terms of what he can do cutting off ball from TKR. And I thought multiple times they had that big to big pass. And I thought Caleb abused his defender, which is the Nebraska legend. I forget his name right now. Braden Bach, off the top of my head. And for all of our talk about Caleb not being a good finisher earlier in the year, and Joe, you said some things about he actually isn't a bad finisher, but the misses are loud. He's been pretty good lately, and he's been fairly decent at the free throw line lately. Tonight he goes 7 and 9 from the free throw line. And just what he brings defensively at his size and his length, being able to switch out and guards and wings up top and also be able to guard guys down low. I thought he was incredible tonight. And I don't know if I'll call him the best player in this game, but I thought he was probably the most impactful player
I agree.
in this game. And also, while we're on it, Greg, let's throw up a super chat and remind everybody that you can grab a super chat in here. If you like the show, if you want to support us, you can go to super chat. That means we're going to automatically bring it up. We're going to read it. And that money just goes to kind of provide to help with our transportation and everything else to these neutral site games and everything else. Chris R says, Osabar proving once again there's no one hotter from the floor than 22% 3-point shooters against Purdue. I made a couple of jokes about that on Twitter early on in this game, but in that first 15 minutes of this game, there was 2 3-point shooters from Washington you had to worry about, and none of them had hit a 3. It was everybody that was shooting 30% or less basically from 3 that was actually hitting 3s against Purdue. And that's kind of a mind F, right? When you go into an away stadium and everybody on your scouting report that says, we don't guard you, don't guard you, make you drive, everything else. And they're all hitting 3s in that first half. then like that messes with you. And Purdue just kind of stuck with the principles. Now, I thought in the second half, Purdue jumped out and guarded the 3-point line much more aggressively than they did in the first half. And I thought that's when a lot of stuff started to shift. But like that can mess with you as a team coming in of like, I'm doing the scouting report, coach. I'm doing what you told me, and they're still scoring on us. And Purdue didn't get rattled by that.
No, and Asabor, bringing the ball up the court, man, he's a tank. He's huge, but very athletic too. And there were some things he did that were pretty impressive. I don't know. He just seemed, he was impressive.
And he was like 0-12 coming in, like on his last 12 3-point attempts coming in.
It kind of reminded me of
he hits like 4 or 5 in this game.
He had 7 coming into the game in his entire career, and then he went 5 of 5 today.
That's crazy. That's out of
the
this
most
world
thing ever.
Yeah. Well, and the way they were starting to defend him at the end reminded me of how they were handling the big from NC State last year, who I fell in love with, and now I've forgotten his name. Burns. Because like he was trying to do like the point center thing where get his back turned, to the basket, let that second defender come up and try to play facilitator, point center, and they just started staying back on him like, hey, figure it out. Brad Prather in the chat says Asabor reminds me of Travion Williams. Travion certainly had a lot of skill at the big man spot. Moving this around.
I want to jump quickly because we're talking about Asabor. Like, I know this is a wild statement that I'm going to make because he had 28 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists. He only missed 1 shot. I don't think Purdue played bad on him. Like, he hits 5 threes. You kind of live with it. I liked what they did defensively and that's their normal defensive scheme of like force baseline and have your help there because they were switching 5 ways, right? They were switching everything, especially early in that game where, right.
Is this a dry erase board situation I'm feeling here?
I had something else drawn up, but I can switch to it really quick. Yeah.
Oh, look at how I made him erase what he worked hard on.
No, it was only 5 numbers.
So an audible. Just called an audible. The award-winning segment is back once again, ladies and gentlemen.
So
dry erase board.
Purdue was switching 5 ways. And so what I mean by that is every ball screen they were switching, whether it be Caleb Furst involved, Braden Smith, it didn't matter. They were switching 5 ways. And right, that's generally, especially Purdue is they are a pretty small backcourt. And that's going to, in general, give up size to guys like Asabor. I know Brainbox not really a post-up guy, but guys like that where, hey, they can get going and kind of use that size to their advantage. And so what Purdue does, it's so say Asabor has the ball here, or even just anywhere in this kind of generalized area, right? Somewhere over here. You're going to play this one defender is going to play just shading a little top. He's not like giving him a free lane to drive baseline, but he's definitely not letting the ball handler go middle. And so this was Asabor. So this could be, Braden at times, Loyer, obviously Caleb Furst, TKR, like the bigs also were heavily involved in this. But then what they do, so if say Washington, they're going to be, they usually were something like this kind of in terms of just like their other players. So this defender right here, whoever that was, he's going to then slide over here. So now he goes over here. You're forcing kind of baseline into the defender. This defender guarding the corner, he now comes over, takes kind of this weak side block right here. And so now your defense is kind of set up like this, where it's like this, and then maybe something like this. You're worried about that skip pass, and Washington did do a little pin-in screen a couple times, like right in this spot where to try to get that. But you kind of just trust your defender here or here to be able to get here in time if that skip happens. And so what this does is that now allows you to switch 5 ways. So now you're not allowing drives as easily or anything like that, but you're not too worried about the size disadvantage because you're forcing into help. And now this help also of note can be anybody. There are times it's CJ Cox. There are a lot of times if it's ideal, it's Caleb Furst, but that's just kind of the defense that not even just for Washington, but Purdue runs that in general, where the post-ups aren't like hard doubles anymore, especially with Edey gone now. Where you can, just have Edey wall up and bring somebody topside. They force baseline. They did it to Asabor last year in the NCAA tournament too, when they played him against Utah State. But it was a pretty good way, I think, to just like like I said, it's a wild statement because Osborne had 28 points and 4 assists, and he only missed one shot. But like, he goes 5 of 5 from 3. You didn't let him get going too much on the interior. He also had 6 turnovers. So, yes, he knocked down some threes and stuff. And it's not like he had a good game, but in a matchup where it felt like Osborne could have just lived at the rim and given this matchup. Like, there's a lot of scenarios where that happens, and that did not happen today.
Yeah, for sure. Moving some things around here. Kraig, the question I was going to ask you, and I was going to jump the guns because we wanted to make sure we gave Caleb Furst his proper flowers here on the show. But let me ask you this. Who is more underappreciated or kind of does his thing and maybe we take it for granted? Is it Fletcher, Loyer, or TKR? Because they seem to consistently every night do what they do, and Braden's obviously always going to get the press, but these two guys once again come out and do what they do. And TKR is, as reliable as they come. And then Fletcher Loyer, kind of put the cherry on top in the second half. You knew eventually he was going to break out and show who he was. But for you, like, do you think that Purdue fans, like, if you had to rank them between the two, are we taking for granted either of these guys?
Braden or TKR?
No. TKR or Fletcher Loyer. I know that was a confusing question. Wasn't
I don't think Purdue fans are taking either of them for granted. I think nationally, like maybe outside of the Purdue scope and people who really follow Purdue, maybe there's some people that are taking one of those two for granted. I think in all honesty, at this point, I think there's more people outside of the Purdue program that are taking TKR for granted because they're just like, well, like that's what Purdue does. Purdue goes to the post, so obviously whoever the best post player is going to score a lot of points because they just get fed the ball all the time, right? But TKR has perfected that little like mid floater so good. Man, that's like when that's on for him, that's almost impossible to stop. Whether he's playing against a 7-footer or whether he's playing against a guy that's like 6'8" and super athletic, if he's got that like 5 to 8 floater, like little push shot going, he's unstoppable. And quite frankly, he didn't have it going in the first half. And I was a little bit worried about that. And then he got it going in the second half. And even more so than that, like he just kind of dug down and got into the rim. I was worried about because Osabar's physical, right? He's not height-wise big, but he's a big body and he's physical. Mm-hmm. And that's had a tendency to give TKR trouble. And I thought it really did give him trouble in the first half. And I was actually going to ask this question to Joe because I thought not only I didn't think it was just Osabar's physicality that gave TKR trouble in the first half. I thought that Washington was really able to dig down with their guards and wings in the first half and like provide a secondary thing that TKR had to pay attention to that made it more troublesome for him because he had 4 turnovers in the first half. And in the second half, I thought Purdue did a much better job of getting him in space one-on-one. And Joe, I don't know if there was something you saw that is a whiteboard thing that's like, yeah, Purdue did this to free it up, and whether they lifted with everybody else higher to really get a one-on-one situation or what. But like, I thought TKR had much more room to operate in that second half.
Yeah, I mean, that was something even coming into the game, right? On our preview, I was just kind of like, hey, they're probably going to give single coverage to TKR in the post. I felt like I don't have a definitive answer. Truthfully, that's my start to this. I do know in the second half, there were times that with the spacing, you can either empty out that strong side corner when he's on the post, or a couple of times that they would have Loyer, and because Washington on the strong side corner. And they put Loyer there because you don't want to help off Loyer. Washington does not want to give up threes. So that still gives him the room to work. Because he had 4 turnovers, I think, in the first half, and
none in the second.
Yeah. I would have to go back and watch. But like I do think a few of the turnovers just came on like the short roll or just like weird catches, sliding to the floor a little bit. Like it was just Like I wonder. I don't know how many of his turnovers came in like the first 6 minutes. Like 2 of them maybe, because those were chaotic.
2 or
minutes,
3,
just
yeah.
overall. So I don't know.
But
I think they did.
I felt he had people crashing down on him in those first 6 minutes, like really hard. And I don't know if that was a design or just aggression or what. I don't know.
Yeah, I would have to go back and watch to like have a legit full answer.
Well, they definitely. I mean, when they got the lead at the end of the first half, they were being way more aggressive defensively across the board. And at one point they tried to pick that pace back up in the second half. They were trying a whole bunch of different things in the second half to try to shake things up defensively. But yeah, it just felt like the aggressiveness they had in the first half did not carry over in the second half. Because what did the Boilermakers have for turnovers on the game? Because it did feel like a lot. I didn't know the exact number, but it was a sloppy
11.
game. Over 11.
It was
7 in the first half and 4 in the second.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they really turned it around in the second half.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 22 points in the first half. Purdue, you're talking about a team that, can put 100 on you, and 22, but then they showed up in the second half, 47 points and reined things in. They're lucky, that the night they had, if that was Oregon, they probably don't have the same fortune to be able to pull out a second half win. You're not like, you can't depend on starting that way on Saturday, right? I mean, I'm not saying you can't, anything's possible, but I just think the competition they played with Washington certainly helped them by being able, because it flipped on its head very quickly to start the second half.
They had more talent and they were able to just settle in. And once that happened, the talent went out and how they were able to execute.
Because it wasn't even a barrage of threes. It was 1-3, right? In that comeback, like by the time they made it, it's 10-point game. They had only hit 1-3, they had none in the first half. So they were doing this like methodically, but it flipped on its head at the 16-minute mark.
Yeah, and that was where you started seeing some more TKR post-ups again, because they went to very early in the first half and then went away. And then I also there was a point in the second half where Washington's hedges just simply weren't as good. Like Washington's hedges against pick and rolls, Purdue's pick and rolls in that first half were phenomenal. Like, truthfully, I know there's some fans asking about like fouls in that. Maybe there's a couple, but I don't think anything was too egregious in my mind in terms of like should have been fouls or anything. I'm sure there's 1 or 2 you could pinpoint if you wanted, but like those hedges just were not as hard and not as aggressive. I don't know, 15 to 10 minutes left in the second half, and that's where then you started seeing a couple times where Braden just gets that short roll to TKR, because instead of being able to, that first half, Braden was getting basically pushed out to half court. And so, right, the whole concept of the hedge is you're putting 2 on the ball because you want the ball handler to push back, and that gives you time to rotate back. Now the ball handler doesn't have an advantage. They did that phenomenally in the first half, and Braden couldn't turn the corner. Braden also couldn't really retreat too easily, and he also couldn't make the passes to the short rolls because Washington did a good job enough of kind of digging in and making that pass difficult. But in the second half, it's one of those. You remember last year, right? We would say you can beat Purdue for 20 minutes, or you can play better than Purdue for 20 minutes, but like you got to do it for 40 minutes to win. Like that was another one of these games where they had to do it for 40 minutes, and I do think just the level of where they were at defensively just wasn't anywhere near where it was the first half. And then if you do that, Purdue immediately is going to take advantage.
Yeah, no question about it. I would say my 2 favorite plays of the game were Braden Smith on the baseline, where he dropped it off to TKR. That was a sick pass, just an absolutely sick pass. And then the second one being Loyer, I believe, or no, not Fletcher. Was it Braden driving to the rim, and Fletcher was
Fletcher,
but Fletcher was open in the corner, and he instead. Oh no, I'm sorry, it was Caleb Furst. He was driving to the rim, and Fletcher was in the corner, and it
was TKR.
Okay,
TKR.
All right,
I'm
sorry. It's late. I'm sorry. It's late. You know what play I'm talking about? Because people are bringing up the announcers here in the chat, and they said a lot of crazy things. And Kraig, you could probably highlight more of them than me. But my favorite part of the game was when TKR is driving to the rim. He makes a great play where if he kicked it out to the outside, the defender went out to the corner, and instead he kept it and went up with it and got the easy 2. And he goes, "Oh man, He should have hit. He got 2, but
Yeah.
Fletcher was in the corner. And I turned to Chetty and go, did he just criticize him for making a basket? What the hell was that? But it was a good play by TKR and a smart one too, honestly. Because that normally can tie up a big man where he could have traveled.
I'm going to be honest, in real time, as much trouble as TKR had in the first half, like this was while he was progressing to a really good second half. As I saw him make that move, I was also like, dude, Fletcher's open in the corner. And then he takes it in and scores. And I'm like, okay. And then TKR hits like his next 4 shots. And I'm like, all right, TKR is back. Like, he's good. We're good. Everything else. But like, even in my head, I was like, pitch it. Like, kick it out to the corner, man. Like,
well, here's the thing I'll say. And if you run it back, I think maybe you might see it from my vantage point, because as soon as he got it, the thing I yell at my house, one more. One more pass. Mm-hmm. And so, because you could feel it developing, but to the defender's credit, he was anticipating that, and Trey read it. And that's why I think he decided ultimately to go inside. So I just thought that was pretty crafty from the big man, handling the ball, being able to make that split second decision and get the easy 2. So those were my 2 favorite plays of the game.
While we're on favorite plays, here's my favorite play, because my biggest concern with this Purdue team all year has been perimeter defense and penetration and lack of rim protection. My favorite play of that entire game, because I thought we did a terrible job stopping penetration in the first half, and they didn't necessarily get all the way to the rim, but they got 2 feet in the paint, and then that allowed them for kickouts for wide open threes that they don't normally hit, but tonight they hit. Somebody in the second half burns a guard, and Caleb comes over from like 5 feet away and just erases that shot into oblivion. And we've been missing that rim protection so much. And to me, that just the reason that's my favorite play is because we haven't played the best competition in the last 6 games, but we're playing some teams that, this Washington team has pushed some teams that are really good in the Big Ten in the last few games. And, whatever, like Caleb just comes over and absolutely erases that shot. And to me, that epitomizes kind of this resurgence. The resurgence of this Purdue team has nothing to do offensively, even though we saw Caleb get 15 tonight, even though we saw CJ get 23 the last game. Everything to me with the resurgence of this Purdue team back to people having higher expectations is because of what we're doing defensively. And to me, that play just like embodied it all.
How about you, Joe? You got a play of the day that stands out to you? I know you're always going to go back through the tape and grind every play out and down, but anything you got for us off the top of your head? Not to put you on the spot. I know this is kind of an impromptu segment we just pulled here.
There was one so I might be conflating 2 plays together, and I'm just going to do it if I did, because I don't know, because it's 12:19 a.m. There was one where you give Fletcher Loyer, like what, he hit 2 threes this game, I think, right? He had a trail or he had the 3 against the 1-3-1 zone, and then he had the other one, 2 of 4. Okay, so it was just basically like the zoom type action where, pin down into a handoff, normal stuff that Purdue runs. We haven't seen it as much this year, just given the nature of you want the ball in Braden Smith's hands as much as possible. But Fletch comes along, gets around, and just kind of pulls up immediately for 3, right, toes right on the line, just drills it. And I don't remember if it was this one or later with the 1-3-1, but maybe it was later. But it goes into a timeout, and he hypes up the crowd, like the road crowd. And you see him on camera, like telling, and so that was just the ability for him to just, he had a bad first half, turn it on quickly. It doesn't matter. Get him 1 or 2 looks. He can be hyper efficient. And then he's right. That's the the Braden and Fletch complement each other so well on so many levels, right? Obviously on court, Fletch is great off ball, kickouts, catch and shoot threes, can drive a little bit, but even just the way that they kind of talk to players and things like that, like Braden's going to look at you, or he's going to, talk to a player, or he's going to signal to the bench, hey, you need to take this player out right now. He can't guard me. But Fletch is always the one that's like, he always plays to the crowd more. And see, I just always love seeing that.
Yeah,
I love seeing both. But.
Our guy Casey Bartley here is in the chat, adding to this as well. Appreciate you, Casey. Send this man the link here. Jeez Louise. He can always come in.
We want to bring him in. Like we can.
I'm just saying, like anytime I keep saying, anytime he's welcome. Guys in our chat, we appreciate his support always, but he's a lot smarter than me. And there were no post-ups from Braden Smith, but his play of the game was Braden Smith getting knocked down, fronting the big guy in the post, gets up and skies to deflect the pass for a steal. Yeah, I mean, Braden's always, and then obviously the other great sequence in this game was Fletcher Loyer. I think it was a 9-point game at the end. Like you said, Purdue could have pushed this to a 20-point game, but Washington kept hanging around, and Fletcher Loyer draws the charge, right? And then the guy gets fouled out of the game. Very next play down the court, Fletcher knocks down the three. Yep. As you would think, it's getting to like the 2-minute warning just underneath, and you're trying to run clock. But hey, you're up 9. Hey, Fletcher Lawyer's wide open there. He knocks it down. So that was a big swing there. Obviously, the game was pretty much out of reach, but not completely. So that just kind of put a highlight on the night for the Boilermakers to finish things off. So
I got one more for you guys in terms of plays of the game. So there was a play where Fletch goes up, jumps in the air, and he's looking to pass. He realizes midair. Okay, this isn't the play of the game, but probably the most difficult play of the game. He goes up, totally looking to pass, realizes midair that he doesn't have the pass anymore, turns his body, turns his head, and still hits a little like 4-foot midi. Like that is so incredibly hard to adjust your body, adjust your position, square up, and still hit that shot in real time. Was ridiculous. Like if you would watch it back, like it's not going to look that incredible, but to completely switch from like, I'm going up to dish this ball, turn, look at the rim, square your body back up, hit that shot. The announcers went nuts about it. Like that play is stupid. And just in terms of the amount of skill that Loyer has with the ball from a shooter standpoint in midair.
Yep. No question. Blake Widmer jumping in saying Braden's step back 3 was the play of the game, or Furst's offensive rebound and 1 putback. I'll say this much. If you go back and watch the big moment in the second half where Furst gets that and 1, he knocks a guy to the ground on the rebound, and it probably could have been called, maybe not probably, but it definitely could have been called an offensive foul. I was waiting for it, but no whistle was blown. And hey, that's get tough, get in the weight room. So good for Caleb to get in the fight and make the refs to make the decision there. And so Blake says definitely a clear out. I wasn't complaining. I just know I try to look at things evenly and think about if it happens to my team, what I would say, and looked like a charge to me. Regardless, one more play that I think stood out for me.
Joe, did you think it was a charge, Joe?
The one where Fletcher Loyer gets it in transition, is that what we're talking about? The chat's talking
where
about?
he gets the charge in transition, yeah. Because I didn't. Like legitimately, I was like, we got a call.
My immediate thought was yes, because I thought Zoom lowered the shoulder and kind of shoved a little, but Loyer does a good job of selling it too, and it helps.
Right.
He was square. He slid his feet.
My immediate thought was it was a charge.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So there. Fletcher's one of the best at it. There's no question about it. We won't ask Isaiah. And then my final one that I think is of note was Jakari Harris. You know, at one point he's like trying to post a guy up, and instead of forcing it, he kicked it back out. And you know what? We could talk about the big plays that make the stat sheet, but for a freshman in that moment, I've seen many a freshman over the last 8 years, you know, get way ahead of their skis in a moment like that. You maybe haven't been able to make an impact on the game. And he thought about it for a second and then thought better of it and kicked it out to TKR. And for me, when you're looking at freshmen developing, there will be bigger and better days ahead for him. But to show that maturity in that moment, I always enjoy watching freshmen make that conscientious decision to not force things when you don't have to.
Yeah, and I want to I want to come back to that point in just a sec, Braggs, but we'll finish up the
Oh,
charge.
it's fine. No, it's good.
I also just rewatched the play right now, and I agree. It's a charge. He lowered his shoulder, went into middle of Lawyer's torso, shoved off. And our correspondent, our ref correspondent Isaiah Walker said it was a textbook charge on Twitter as well. So he's moving, but that's still allowed. But also, charge calls are stupid in general. Like there's no definitive what is or isn't.
Okay.
Point, it feels like.
I was like, you're saying there should never be a charge?
No. But getting back to the Jakari, like the reason I like that decision so much is because that one thing that I've liked about Jakari all year is it feels like he makes the right decision like 90% of the time, right? And he's a freshman, he's not perfect. That first half, to me, that was maybe his worst half of like the year, ? And I know he's shot the ball not great, but there was just a couple defensive decisions that were poor. And a couple decisions, like the 3-pointer that he did shoot didn't feel in rhythm. And the shot that he took going to the rim, I didn't think was great. But at that second half, he then still gets back to like, okay, no, I'm going to make the right decision. I'm going to do the right thing. I know we haven't, right? Like really all three freshmen, I think it was a bad game in general from them. They all had individual good moments, but I don't think it was any like Burgess. It was not his game. And I don't think Harris or Cox were spectacular. But at the same time, they still do a little bit of what they needed to do, and you get a win and can still contribute even if the ball isn't going through the hoop.
That's right. Rolling things along here. That's not Kraig Bowers. It's Casey Bartley. How are you? Been joining the chat here this season, and we appreciate you hanging out with us and joining here us late. Casey, another big win for Purdue, as we said, 6 in a row. When we were looking at this schedule going into Big Ten play for 2025, we all talked about how important it was to get off to a hot start. Have they exceeded your expectations in any way, not just with the fact that they have won all these games, but how they've won them?
Good morning, boys.
Morning.
Yeah, it's kind of been a tale of two seasons, right? Because going into this break, didn't feel great about them this little stretch after the holidays, but the last 6 games, particularly defensively, this team has gone to a level that I didn't think was possible. Caleb Furst and Braden Smith get 9 steals today between the two of them, and just in general, the connectedness, the ability to have pressure on the ball with the big guys, with the guards. It's been a fun run, and all of a sudden Purdue looks not as good as last year, maybe, but definitely seem like a team that can do a lot of big things.
That's right. Casey Bartley joining the show. Kraig will be back here in just a few moments. And so, yeah, it's interesting. I agree with you. Watching them beat Rutgers and then like that succession of Northwestern, then Rutgers, and then on Sunday against Nebraska. I came on the postgame show to start the Nebraska game, just completely blown away with how they've really hit their stride. And like it shouldn't be a surprise when you watch how Matt Painter does this every year. It's like Mickey Mouse in Fantasia. He's just dancing. And it's amazing to watch him orchestrate this every year to find the team's identity. And man, they like players are really starting to slide into their correct roles and not just be assigned their roles, but embrace them to where then they can thrive, from that role. And so I think Caleb Furst is probably first and foremost, no pun intended, kind of the leader of like this transition this team has gone through.
Yeah, I agree with Joe, what he said earlier. I thought Furst was by far the best player for Purdue today. And I think if any of us had said that 2 months ago, we'd be a little surprised. And you make a good point, because this team has so many different parts now, and it's just not quite as clean as it was last year to start. And now it kind of is. And it's been a lot of reshuffling, making things work, finding combos that work. And then once again, just true freshmen that are playing way above what they should be. And that might be the number one Matt Painter staple in the last few seasons.
No question. As Kraig comes back to the program here on the Boilers in the Stands post-game show. Hit that like button while you're hanging out as we start to round third here on
Greg, I just wanted to throw one thing in there because something that Casey said made me think about this again. But like,
yeah, for sure.
Just again, like Joe and I in the off season and even in the first month, like we're like patience. Like, let this team develop, let them figure out who they are, let them do what they're doing. And like, I mean, I can tell you, I went to those summer practices, right? Casey and I were there watching those summer practices. And even in that moment, I think Casey would agree. None of us would have been like, Caleb is going to be super impactful this year. Because it just didn't look like it. It just wasn't there. And like at some point, Caleb like just fit a role with his team, with the people around him. And now that he's getting minutes, like he's reestablishing that comfortability that he has around the basket, around the rim. And it takes minutes to do that. And not practice minutes. Practice minutes are important. You can grow, you can change, but it takes live game minutes to get super comfortable. And the more and more he's out there, the more we're seeing him exceed in that role. And I think it completely changes this team's not ceiling. Ceiling.
Floor?
It completely changes. My bad. It's late, man. It's friggin' late. It completely changes this team's ceiling with what Caleb has been doing in the last 6 games. And yeah, again, I know like DK Spartan, like Michigan State guy was coming at me on Twitter like, yeah, but they haven't really played anybody in these last 6 games. I get that. But also like it's been impressive against those teams. And also Michigan State hasn't really played anybody either. So
yeah, for sure. I don't know really where you guys want to take this. I mean, we haven't really talked about Braden Smith at all. We've talked about Fletcher. We talked about TKR and
Braden
Furst.
Smith's on this team.
Yeah,
Braden. Is this like last year? Is this like last year where we round third and we're like, oh yeah, we should probably mention the player of the year?
Yeah, but I think we have reached that point. And he had no post-ups tonight, Casey, unfortunately. I was waiting for it. You know, there was a few moments where I thought maybe we'd get one, but to no avail, unfortunately. But yeah, Joe, when you look at Braden Smith's stats for the night or anything that you're looking at, what stood out to you the most? Because obviously when you look at Braden, 17 points on 7 of 14 shooting, only 1 of 3 from 3-point land, 2 of 2 from the free throw line. You know, doesn't say how many minutes he played. Oh, he played all 40 minutes. Yeah, I don't need to see how many minutes he played because he played all 40 once again here tonight. Joe, we'll start with you. What stood out to you for Braden Smith's night?
Yeah, I think you're really starting to see over these last handful of games his ability to just create off the bounce. And a game, a team like Washington, where they were hard hedging, or just at times basically just staying at home, where they just wanted to stay at home, didn't allow kickouts, didn't want to allow the short roll. You just saw Braden multiple times just, all right, I'm just going to take my guy to the rim. It's just simple as that. And this is where I keep kind of coming back to over this last stretch, and I understand they do need to do this against better teams going forward, right? They have to. The tough non-con scheduling, I do think, is still starting to show up in positives now, even though there's a few bad losses. You know, the Auburn loss was gigantic, and Penn State was a game that, looking at this point, they probably would win if they played again. And A&M was the one where they probably should have got that win just in general. But I think you're starting to see some of the benefits from it of like Braden's been in these spots now against tougher teams, against more athletic teams, against physical teams. He's kind of seen the furthest extent he could in those types of games, in those types of scenarios. And so now he can just take these dudes off the bounce and be like, okay, yeah, pick and roll isn't working because they're putting 2 on the ball and they're doing a pretty good job, being in passing lanes. I'm just going to take Tyler Harris off the bounce. I'm just going to take Zoom Diallo off the bounce, and I'm just going to get to the rim. And I didn't realize this until I just looked. Braden, I mean, we all know Braden's shooting super well from 3, right? 41% on the year, 40.5% in Big Ten play. He's shooting 60% from 2 in Big Ten play. Like he's shooting 47% on the year from 2. He's up to 60% from 2 in Big Ten play. A lot of it coming from the pull-ups and then some of those ISO drives that we're seeing more of.
Well, and I think one of my favorite plays too for him was when you talk about being able to take a guy one-on-one off the bounce, it's also about pace. Like he can take anybody to the rim, but there was a point in the game where he got up to the 3-point line. He could have forced it in, but it would have been more of a contested shot. He hesitates, steps back, lets it kind of reset, and then blows by his guy for a wide open layup. And that to me is that's like a running back that understands not like, yeah, you can always hit the whole full speed, but you're going to get the angles if you're playing with the right pace. And Casey, like to me, like he's really just perfected his craft this year in a way that it's a joy to watch. It's basketball art.
Yeah, and if you're talking about playing against pressure the way that Washington gave it, being able to beat your guy one-on-one, not necessarily needing to grab that second guy and pulling him in, that's going to help a lot. And just his willingness to go at the rim. Purdue still doesn't really have that elsewhere. And it's against his nature. But the thing is, he needs those baskets to set up the other guys. It's not a coincidence they started getting a little more space when he started making the layups. And then when you're an elite mid-range guy, like when you get to that free throw area, you just make defenses have to make impossible choices. And that's what he's better at than probably anyone else in the country. It's just impressive. I mean, I think he's up to like 5th on Ken Palm now for player of the year. And he's also taken a ton of threes.
Yep.
Like well over 100 at this point.
Well,
and there's nothing more dangerous than an off the dribble 3-pointer if your guy can make it.
No question. And a dude that plays with a ton of confidence. When you talk about him being, a player of the year candidate, top 5 player in the country, Kraig, what we were talking about the other night, his defense is really starting to put him into another territory that I don't know. I certainly wasn't didn't think that was something we'd be talking about at this point in the season. But from you, Kraig, like, what did you see from him defensively? Because I felt like, he was scrappy once again.
Yeah, I mean, he's just harassing people now. And he's also – people underestimate the impact of his wingspan, right? And I was having this conversation with the guy at brokerage the other night about the difference between Carson and Braden. And to me, I've walked by both of those guys in the same hallway. And to me, they're basically relatively the same size. Braden's wingspan is huge for his actual height. And that allows him to be a pest defensively. And I just, for as much as I credit Purdue's defensive change to CJ and Caleb getting inserted into this lineup, I also think that Braden just came back from Christmas break and has had a renewed focus on being a pest. He's not who was the dude from Ohio State, Joe? Aaron Kraft.
Okay. That was
yeah,
just
the guy.
When we talk about a defensive pass from Ohio State, that should jump to your mind, Joe. I realize you were probably 15. I realized you were probably 15 at the time, but
I have good memories of watching him in middle school, March Madness.
Yeah, these last 4 or 5 games, he's to a small degree, just reminded me of him of just being a pest, getting into the ball, getting into passing lanes, that type of things. And how many steals did he have tonight?
5.
Casey, you said something? 5?
5. Yeah.
I just feel like there's a different focus with him. And quite frankly, if he's going to ever make it in the NBA, which I do think he has a chance to do,
100%.
he's got to be a defensive pest also. He's got to be who's the backup point guard for the Pacers right now?
McConnell.
He's got to be that TJ McConnell guy that's going to come in and I'm going to zoom all over the floor. I'm going to get you a bunch of assists, but I'm also going to be a defensive pest at the same time. He's got to be that type of guy. And I think he's hitting that zone and focus to be able to do that. Also, Casey, you need to check your phone. But at the same time,
he just throws
feel
that.
I feel like so Joe and I talked about this after the Auburn game, and I think it was a post Toledo game where we were like looking forward to the rest of the season. But one of the things we said was like, yeah, a lot of Big Ten teams can try to high hedge and can try to trap Braden, but they can't do it like A&M does. They can't do it like Marquette does because that's their culture. Like that's what they do to everybody every single game. And what you're seeing a lot of in the Big Ten is people are like, oh, we have to high hedge Braden. We have to try to trap Braden, blah, blah, blah. But that's not necessarily like their internal culture that they do every single day at a really, really high level. And some of these teams are trying to do it. And Braden's just dragging it out and being like, F you. like you, yeah, you're not those teams. You can't do that to me. I'm going to drag it out. And then I'm going to either go score on my own or I'm still going to just spring it and I'm going to hit TKR and nobody's back there to guard him at that point. So I don't, other than UCLA, which has not looked great lately, but they're still really good defensively. I just don't know if there's a Big Ten team that can impact him the same way that we saw some of those non-conference teams do it.
No
Maybe
question.
Michigan State, maybe just with because they got perimeter guards everywhere, but it's still not the high, like super hard high hedge, although they do hedge.
For sure. You're watching the Boilers in the Stands post-game show. Please hit that like button if you're up this late and watching this show this far into it. That means you like what you see. We appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're watching on Facebook or Twitter or anywhere else, we appreciate your viewership to the show. But if you hop over to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, sincerely helps us out with what we're trying to build. So we appreciate everybody hanging out here as we're reaching the end of the night here. It's a late night on the East Coast, still before midnight for the people that live in the normal time zone. That is the central time zone. So, sucks to be you guys, but I'll let you guys finish it from here. I got a little more work to do. So the other night,
we have one comment for you because I meant to bring it up last time. And I told him to bring it up again this time, and I said that, Joe, to you. So okay. I need you can try to keep it quick. I know it's you though.
It's stressful.
Painter to coach the Bears?
Matt, I would. You know what? Honestly, no. You know why? Because I enjoy what we do here. Okay, this is fun. The Bears are the most stressful thing. I have loved them my entire life, but having to cover them now is great. It's an honor and a privilege, and I'm living my dream while I watch my nightmare of a football team. And so being able to come over and talk basketball with you guys and go to Mackey Arena and watch the best coach in all of college basketball, I truly believe that. And I've been saying this for years before he got to a national championship. And so, no, I would not want – that would just be – just counterproductive for both teams. I don't need him with the Bears because he doesn't deserve that, and I want to keep him. I want to keep him here with the Boilers forever because it's a lot of fun to watch him coach this team up. So I'm going to take off though to avoid what's happening right now, which is the Midwestern goodbye, which I know everybody enjoys. But I'll let you guys get to the highlighted chats and let you guys wrap it up. So appreciate you jumping on tonight, Casey, and I'll talk to you guys here on Saturday.
You got to build that banner real quick for Casey, though, because I just texted you and told you that was good.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
All right. There we go. We're an hour into the show. It is 12:45 a.m. Eastern time. Is there anything overarching you guys want to hit on? If not, I think we should just get to comments and then kind of wrap this one up. Casey has something.
I have one thing.
Let's do it.
We keep talking about CJ Cox. We mentioned Carson Edwards. And I think the one thing that he does different than Jakari, even a little different than Fletcher, Miles, Camden, he plays so fast off the ball. And his ability to put defenses in those wrenches or just move the defense that quickly, I think that's always been when Matt Painter's offense flow and work the best. And his ability to play at 100%, that was how Carson Edwards and Ryan Klein brought a team to, a free throw away from the Final Four. So I think him getting that already this early, I know me and you, Kraig, were very early on the CJ Cox train. I would still buy all the stock right now for him now, the season, and going into the future.
Yeah. Even when he was 0-3 tonight, like
Yeah.
I thought there was 3 or 4 times he had a shot and passed it up.
Yeah.
And I was like, shoot it.
Right.
Shoot it. Like you're too good of a shooter. Just keep shooting. And I mean, it's almost hilarious at this point, Joe, because like I've tracked this. If he shoots at least 5 field goals, he scores double figures. Right? He goes 0-4 tonight and doesn't score a point. But like literally every single game where he gets to the point that he shoots 5 shots, he scores double figures. And some of that is like because he sees that first one goes through and then he goes ahead and takes 8 or 9 shots in a game, right? I just think he's too good of a shooter. He has to, like, when that shot's there, he has to take it. I thought Cam passed up 2 or 3 shots tonight too. Like he missed that first 3, and then I thought he passed up 2 or 3 shots. We really haven't gone through a player breakdown, and I don't think we need to at an hour into the show. But like I thought Miles Early was really good. And just being active around the rim, being active on the ball, being active defensively. Like even though he only plays 14 minutes tonight, which is kind of wild because he got off to a good start. Like I thought he played good minutes tonight. I don't know. It was just a weird night because it felt like a night because Joe, when we did the preview show, I'm going to be completely honest. I had watched literally one half of Washington basketball, and like I had told you that, but I did not tell the viewers that because I hadn't had time to actually settle in and watch Washington basketball. And then after we did the show, like I watched a little bit more. And I told a couple buddies of mine today that like to gamble on sports. I was like, yeah, I feel like this is going to be a pretty much strictly like TKR and Smith game. Like they're going to run everybody else out. And if we're going to win, it's going to be a TKR and a Braden type of game because they're going to shut off the 3-point shooters, blah, blah, blah. That's pretty much what it ended up being, except Loyer got going later. But I like that doesn't take me down any lower on everybody else that's around them. And I totally miss Furst's impact, obviously. Like, yeah. If you had the like +5 Furst bet, good for you. Because he blew that up today. But I feel much more comfortable at January. What are we at? January 12th? January 16th, whatever.
16th, buddy.
I feel so much more comfortable January 16th than December 31st about Purdue consistently having a 4th man that's going to step up.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Furst was awesome. I like coming in, right? When we did the preview, that was one of my keys was TKR just has to get going in the post. He got that. Just how Washington wanted to play. And it's just another game where you can I know Washington's not good, right? They're probably the second worst team in the Big Ten. But it's still another game where, hey, they go on the road, 3-point shot isn't falling, which sometimes can just win you a game, i.e. Nebraska. But they still get the win, and they can do things in different ways. They can now beat guys in ISOs. They can now, get random CJ Cox or Miles Colvin big games, or Jakari can have a solid game or something like that and step up. Or Furst obviously does what he did today, and maybe what was his best game of his entire career. So the big three are going to big three. They're going to do their thing, and that's going to be relied on. But I agree. There's more probability that somebody steps up as the 4th spot. The Colvin thing, I think it just goes back to they wanted the second ball handler more, just given how many turnovers Purdue had in that first half, especially. I think plus that first lineup comes out hot. CJ plays well. Or that's with CJ in the lineup. They play really well in the first 5. So then he's just going to go back to that to kind of close out the rotation. So we didn't talk about everybody individually, but like I don't know. I think we kind of hit on everybody. Like I guess the only thing with Cam I'll mention is like I agree. Passed up some shots. He went 0 of 1 from 3. He went 2 of 2 from the line. I forget how he got there, to be honest.
Offensive rebound.
Okay, there it is.
Oh,
And
sorry.
that's my point, is like he's doing enough stuff elsewhere that it still warrants minutes, and especially you're hoping to get him back on track. Like he's not out there being he didn't make a three, he did nothing at least. And this is me spinning it a little bit positive, I guess, but I do believe that he is still at least doing other things.
Yeah, and in general about this team going to Washington and still winning this game, right? Like, we know this team is not going to be plus 10 in rebounding and have that advantage every single game like we did with Zach Edey, right? And this team, like, if you're just going to lay this team out on paper and say, well, like, what's the advantage over every other team, generally speaking, it's going to be that we are an elite three-point shooting team. Didn't do that tonight, right? So you look through the box score and you say, well, how did this team win this game? And a lot of it, right? We had 18 points off turnovers. Washington had 4. We had 40 points in the paint. They had 22. I think a month ago, if you'd have said we'd have beat somebody 40 points in the paint to 22, you'd have been like, I mean, like, I can believe that with TKR. But if you told somebody that we had a plus 14 advantage in points off turnovers a month ago, like, Casey would have slapped me in the face. Like, so what? Now that's 17 turnovers. So now, because I asked Coach Painter, Casey, you were there. I asked him in the last press conference. I was like, your top 4 or 5 forced turnover games have come in the last 7 or 8 games. Like, what changed? And he said they started playing more pressure with their bigs up top. And now this is another one. So now it's like 5 out of their like top 8 turnover games have come in terms of forced turnovers have come in like the last 8 games. Like, it's just, it's a switch that is flipped completely to me. So we can talk offensively about all kinds of things, but I just think this team is completely switched defensively.
And that was the whole, like, and I think we should probably get to some comments after this because it is getting late, and I still have some other stuff I have to record tonight.
Really?
You're a glutton.
Yeah, I got 2 previews I got to do. But that was the whole thing. Even when the TKR push for TKR at the 5 was happening, and I think I talked to Casey right after the national championship of like, hey, TKR at the 5 is probably the way to go, right? Like this, I was a big advocate for it. Once we got into the season, though, even with Furst at the 5 or whoever you wanted to throw in at the 5, and I know we've hit on this, the offense didn't drop off. Like there was no drop off offensively in terms of production. Was it as aesthetically pleasing at its peak? No. TKR at the 5 is going to be more aesthetically pleasing. Like it just is. But like the actual production did not fall off offensively. And you were getting so much better defensively, even in those early games, right? Like I know Furst, some of this, like it's not like Furst. It's just been weird, right? Because he still played early a good bit. Mm-hmm. And there was moments where it was just he looked unplayable. And then there's other moments it's like, oh yeah, no, he's looking fine. And then he's kind of just flipped into they have to do it, and now he's stepping up. But yeah, the offense was never the issue. Regardless if you have Braden, Fletch, and TKR on the floor, good things are going to happen offensively. It was the
doesn't matter who's around him. Yeah,
Purdue had a different defense.
Yeah,
their entire summer was built upon Jacobson being at the 5. And one thing when you watch Jacobson, which I'm not sure I was prepared for,
how can you say that when they started Will Berg in the first game?
They're the same player, same style defensively, not same player defensively, but same style.
Yeah, so they've had to rotate from the super drop to what Pater said in your answer, and Trey doesn't get enough credit for being as good on the perimeter as he is. You have really 2 elite big guys on the perimeter, and it's taken, a few games. The long break over the holidays, I'm guessing a lot of defense was installed there. I talked to Paul Lusk a little about just implementing, 2 new freshmen and them into it. And I don't think it's a coincidence that they've gotten aggressive. They've gotten on the ball. They're forcing turnovers now. And I just saw in the chat, they're 38th now in KenPom. We were talking about like a 90th ranked team like 5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
No,
Wild.
it's been massive, and they can easily get their way into the top 25 defense. Not easily; they have to play well, but they can do it.
Yeah. Casey, while we have you on, since you don't show up all the time, even though we invite you all the time. I'm just kidding. Greg like passively invites you, but doesn't actually send you a link. But and then we'll get to the start comments. So Joe can record like 2 more hours of videos before he goes to bed because he's a glutton like that. I think the scariest team in the Big Ten is Michigan. And if I'm like, I may or may not have put some money on Michigan to win the national title a couple of days ago.
What?
I think their starting 5 is scary, freaky, unicorn good. But I also think Purdue is uniquely positioned to defend them very well with TKR and Caleb with Caleb's athleticism. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that. As we're like less than 2 weeks out now, Joe, from playing Michigan.
Yeah, basically a week. It's next Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we have this conversation 5 weeks ago, I'm terrified of any team that has any competency on offense. Yeah. And like the system works at Michigan. We all know that. But I do think when you're talking about what they do well, like if you built someone in a lab to guard Danny Wolf, it's Caleb Furst.
Yeah.
If you designed a defense to take on someone like Danny Wolf, it's Purdue's. You live with him shooting threes, you force him into an area, you get a lot of hands on his dribble. One thing Purdue hasn't faced is a ton of great shooting teams. Obviously, they're scary with Trey Donaldson and, Namari Burnett, like very good shooting team. I think I've been down on Michigan State for like 5 years now, and that's worked out pretty well for me. But yeah, I think all these tier systems, I know the 2 undefeateds are in Michigan, but I think it's Purdue and Michigan far above anyone else in the Big Ten. And if you're talking teams that have the ceiling to really do damage in the tournament, that's what I'm looking at. I don't know how good Michigan's defense actually is.
You're excluding Illinois?
I think so.
What?
It's a little personal. Like I'm not gonna lie.
I am not there. I am not there with you.
I get it. I just don't trust the isolation heavy back and forth of Illinois that it tends to get to when things get tough.
I was waiting for Joe to respond here.
I'm high on Illinois. If we're talking about the top 4, right, of Michigan, Illinois, Purdue, Michigan State, I think that's a fairly consensus top 4 in whatever order you want to put. I honestly don't have much issue with any of them. You could easily make the argument, and I would buy it for any of them to be the top. For Illinois, I think they have maybe them and Michigan have the highest floor probably to me when everything's clicking, just because like if Illinois is clicking, that means they're knocking down threes. That means Jakob Jonas is being a top 3 draft pick, which he probably should be, and things like that. So I don't know. I think they all have a couple holes. They all have a lot of strengths. It's going to be a fun stretch. It's kind of my general stance. I don't know, it's morphed into this. Like right now I have Michigan 1 just based on, I think they have the most unstoppable action out of any team in terms of Wolf and Gold. Like I've seen teams try to switch. I've seen teams go under. I've seen teams play drop. I've seen teams play hedge. I've seen teams trap. I've seen teams blitz. I've seen teams like basically just stay at home. It doesn't matter. Wolf has dissected every single one of them, and you're basically just hoping he misses. But it's going to be fun. That matchup's going to be ginormous. I do think if you win the next 2 at Oregon, home against Ohio State, it takes a little pressure of like it has to be a must win off your back. But at the same time, I mean, you can we're getting into hypotheticals and we should just get to some star comments. But say you win the next 2 at Oregon, Ohio State, If you win against Michigan, you are then 9-1 in Big Ten, and you're looking at home against IU, at Iowa, home against USC is the next 3, and then you get into the crazy tough stretch. There's
Michigan
a very
also
clear
hasn't
path
beat
for Purdue
anyone.
to get there, huh?
Like Michigan hasn't beat anyone.
Yeah, neither is really Michigan State, outside of sorta UNC. If you sorta,
No, not sort of.
but also
UNC's terrible.
That's the proper cadence.
yeah. So, all right, let's get to some comments and then let's get out of here. Matt Wrench said, I was watching a different show at halftime. Saw we took a 33-32 lead on my phone. I, of course, did not turn the TV back to the game. Couldn't risk it. You are all welcome. We appreciate Matt's sacrifice, not watching the game, and so that way Purdue could win. Also, I think I started this because my girlfriend did a similar thing that she watched the first half. She had to go to bed for work, and then she does not know that Purdue won by 11. So maybe it's just, you add those things up, and maybe they do make a difference. This from
we appreciate your
Casey-
sacrifice, Matt.
No, he's gone.
Casey Bartley.
Bartley,
Bartley?
Boyd.
Brags, where are we going golfing this spring? I would like to golf.
We
Oh,
should have
yeah,
brought
Joe
that up
golfs.
when
That's
Braggs.
right.
We should have brought that up when Braggs was actually on the show.
Yeah, I know. I forgot to.
We'll get
Derek Mulkin. Washington got it to 8 and Loyer draws a charge and then hits a 3. Just needed it to be a big game. Big game Fletch. That's seems like time and time again. He just kind of shows up randomly in the moments that you don't really expect. And then he is there. Rowlett Boiler. Are there 2 guys that scream old school Indiana basketball more than Braden and Fletch? Is there
Brian
they're
Waddell.
up there, right?
I get it more with Fletch. Like, to me, Braden's modern basketball.
no.
I like Braden is. They didn't jump up in the air and sprout passes like 23 feet away in old school Indiana basketball. But yeah, like Fletch, I get it. Like, just get a screen, get downhill, shot fake, draw a foul, or hit a 5 to 8 foot bank shot. So
It's Brian Waddell.
There it is.
Number 1 Indiana player of all time. He's
He
got
was
the low
good.
squat.
Casey, I'm not really comfortable with.
Matt Spurgeon, a little worried about Furst not being guarded outside of 6 feet going forward. Tonight he made it work because Braden was able to attack the rotations. Not sure if that works against MSU. I have had something ready to go on my board for 30 minutes about this. Do I go do it?
Do it, Joe.
Is it him sealing off? Is it him sealing off guys down low?
No, but that is also a viable option. I was just gonna go there are still ways to use non-shooters, and Matt Painter is one of the guys that do it. And this is not revolutionary in any sense of the word, right? This is a very, very common thing. This generalized area, and right in here, that's called the dunker spots. And so if you have a non-shooter, you'll see a lot of times teams will put their player in the dunker spot offensively. And so Purdue didn't get to it quite as much today because of how good at times Washington was hedging and pushing Braden back to way up here. But in theory, right, if you have this and a defender hedges, you get TKR on the short roll. That's where Caleb Furst can be here in this dunker spot. Now you have TKR here, and then you're going to probably have some sort of one of these defenders is going to have to rotate, right? Because you have 2 up here and Braden. And so that's where if this guy steps up, that's where you can get these kind of lob passes, or you can get if he's here, you can kind of get him to cut a little bit more to the rim. So there are ways to work around it, even if he's not even involved in the ball screen. And obviously with TKR's ability to score in the short roll, you're not going to have Furst set too many screens, but that's another way. My long or short answer to that is there are ways to work around it, even if you have 2 shooters not on the floor at the same time, just with spacing, how you can kind of manipulate defenders and things like that. And nobody in the country is better at it than Braden. Bragg's he's lurking around, says 1 a.m. board, 1 a.m. board. Yeah. That is where we're at, 1:05 a.m. If you're still tuned in and you aren't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. We're here post game live every single game. A few more comments, we'll get out of here. Randall Buck, really, it's 10 turnovers. The 11th was Braden holding the ball into a shot clock violation to run time off in the final seconds. I didn't have that one started. I don't know if you guys got comments on that.
I didn't have
It is
started.
silly that we count.
I mean,
Yeah.
I
Also,
started. I just
get it
didn't,
out of-
like.
Sorry.
No, I'm just saying I started because we said 11 turnovers and he said it, and I was like, oh, well, that's a good point. So, yeah.
You have to get it out of Braden's hand at the end there because he is going for the assist turnover record. Just you can't count that silly one on him.
Does it count for him? Or is it one of those that's like a team
right?
one?
Is it a team?
There was one team turnover because he had 4. I think, yeah, because I think they did it for that specific reason.
Like, I mean, does it matter if he gets the NCAA all-time assist record? Like, I don't think anybody's going to care about that.
Yes.
I'm with Casey. It might as well. Like, doesn't hurt him.
It would be to be the all-time anything.
We bring a guy on from another friggin' like, outlet one time, and Joe immediately sides with him. And
my bad. From Jeff Parks, it's refreshing to have pod hosts that look at the season from a development aspect. Many others live in instant reactions. I know for me, in a lot of my work, like I try to stay away from overreactions. It's my one. It's. I mean, we're really getting into it now, like, right? Because there's the whole like NBA's bad product, like all that stuff. I like the NBA. I understand where people come from, like, you know, they don't play as hard, that type of stuff. To me, it's not that they don't play as hard. It's that the games don't mean as much in the regular season because Purdue played one Big Ten game today. That is 5% of their Big Ten conference schedule. That is a massive part for 40 minutes of basketball. And so it's less of like the, like it gets to where you have to overreact given how small sample size college basketball is, but also like I try not to. I appreciate Jeff. I know you're always in here. Appreciate the support. I would say that goes for both of you as well. I feel fairly comfortable that like trying not to overreact to every little thing.
So I do a podcast for Field of 68. So I'm contractually obligated to do, is this the end of Braden Smith? Is this the end of the Purdue season? Like, that's just our brand.
Yeah, that's fair. That is very fair.
Like, no, you have to do that?
Have to do. No.
Okay.
It's just kind of what we do.
Yeah, I mean, like, I get it. And I mean, the conversation. So when I get into conversations with random people that run into me in places and they're like, man, like, you guys seem so level headed and you don't have these wild takes. One of the things that I say to them is like, Joe and I don't do this for a living, right? Like,
true.
There is no need for Joe and I to, like, if 200 people watch this show or 5,000 people watch this show, which both sometimes happen, by the way. Okay. Like there's not been only 200 people watch this show in like years, but nonetheless, you get what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't matter to us because this is all like whatever income we get from this is cool to help us go travel to games, blah, blah, blah. But like, we have real friggin' jobs like beyond this. And a lot of those other people that are making those wild takes, that's their job. And if they don't draw those viewers in, they don't have a job, right? To do the cool stuff, to do the sound stuff. So like, I get it. I understand it, all those sort of things, but I'm just on a totally different tangent. You brought the NBA into this show and I have a completely different take on that. Like, my take on the NBA right now, and like, you can both tell me to shove it or whatnot, but my take on NBA right now is men's tennis. When you look at the men's tennis game versus the women's tennis game, like, men's tennis mastered the game to such a level that it wasn't enjoyable to watch anymore because they were hitting 145, 150 mile an hour serves, and there were no volleys in games. There were no big long rallies, anything else. Like, that's the way it was. To me, that's NBA basketball right now. Like, shooters have mastered the game to the point in the NBA where people watch it and they're like, nobody's playing defense. And it's like, no, they are. They're just that good that they're hitting a 25-foot shot over a hand in their face. And it makes it look like nobody's playing defense. And that's like, I'm to the point where I legitimately think the NBA needs to raise rims. I think we need to go from 10 foot. No, I'm serious. Because the game's too easy right now. For NBA players, the game is too easy right now. Why do we love college football? Why do we love college basketball? It's because there's like this attrition at times and these crazy things that happen where you're not perfect. Imperfection makes those games beautiful. And I think we're losing. I think we're losing the imperfection and the wildness in the NBA sometimes.
I think that's
just my take.
And I don't need to spend much more on it, but I agree. Like, it is so good. And that's where, like, the actual product, like, obviously, NBA basketball is so much better than college. But what makes college fun is that you get all of those random, and not everybody is super skilled, and you just kind of make it work.
Right. Just to touch on the question for a second, what you guys do and what we try to do is we only focus on Purdue, and that's honestly the key to us having long-term views, knowing what's going. Because we're not just watching a snapshot. You guys are there at games, you're there at practices, you're talking to coaches. You get to see the full picture, and there are so many games going on. Like, you guys do a great job of knowing what the hell's going on in the Big Ten. Half the time, someone will ask me a question like, "Oh, what do you think about Michigan this week?" I'm like, "I watched Purdue 5 times. I didn't see anyone else play." And so, yeah, I think that focus definitely helps.
Fair enough. I mean, we're getting deep insights. 1:15 a.m. time after the game. I love it.
An hour and a half into this is our longest show by far.
Yeah. This is like back when we had like Aiden on, when like our shows would be legit 2 hours. Tariq Kamel, similar. So the context of this, I think they're talking about Carson Edwards versus Braden Smith's chance at the NBA. Similar but different, he says, but both cannot be a PG star in the NBA. Smith has a better chance, but I won't believe it till I see it. I have probably a year now, have been on Braden Smith is going to get a chance in the NBA. Yeah. There are roles for him as a backup point guard. I think the difference for me in terms of like sustainability of somebody like Carson compared to Braden is like, it is tough to be. Carson's draw is how good of a scorer he is. It is tough to do that at 5'11" in the NBA. I know he's super athletic and stuff. It's tough to be your draw. I think it's a lot easier to be like, oh, hey, this dude, Braden Smith, has unreal passing vision and can be maybe a little bit feisty defensively. I think it is much easier to fit that role than a high volume score at 5'11".
Yeah, that's Carson's elite skill was scoring, and he didn't score well in the NBA. He was never an efficient shooter.
Because he was a volume shooter. He's efficient when he's a volume shooter, but he was never going to be a volume shooter because volume shooters in the NBA are all 6'8", and he was 5'11". Like, you can't park Carson in the corner and be like, "Hey, here's 3 passes a game. Hit those 3 shots." Like, that's not who Carson is. So yeah, 100%.
Steve Nash won an MVP.
True.
Like, being a savant with the basketball is the number one thing you can have.
How tall was Nash?
5'11". Maybe, yeah, like 6.
Was he 5'11"?
No, he might have been like 6'3", actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's 6'3".
Yeah.
John Stockton was 6'1".
Yeah. Braden Smith ain't 6'1". TJ McConnell's listed at like 6 foot, right? Something like that.
I thought McConnell's like 6'4".
No, he's not 6'2". We looked it up the other day because I was having this argument with somebody. Yeah, the other day. Maybe 6'1". Yeah. So we gotta throw some love to Late Night Tips live stream. There's no comment there, but you gave us a super chat for $1.99, so we gotta throw you love. Appreciate you tuning in. Thank you very much for the super chat. We got Bonner. Bonner.
Bowner?
Bonner.
Downer Boiler Ball for 490 says Joe on the board. It's the best. I'm glad you all enjoyed that. I tried my best. I would hopefully I would try to get. Well, I'm trying to work on a little bit of an upgrade and maybe make it a little bit clearer. So I don't know if that'll happen this year. It might be a next year type of thing. But appreciate
Can
the
we get a
support.
nickname for the board?
It used to be like Joe's X's and O's or something like that was our nickname for the segment.
Yeah.
We could
should
try
do
to
that
bring
again.
that back. Yeah. There we go. Last comment, of course, from the one and only Greg Bragg says, "Ha, now who does the Midwestern goodbyes?" With that, got to make sure I do not do a Midwestern goodbye. So we appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications. You'll get notified as soon as we go live. As soon as we put up our preview, most likely, honestly, later today for the Oregon. If not, it'll be Friday. Appreciate Casey coming on. Casey, let everybody know where they can find you and your work.
Yep, over at Boiler Upload Rivals Network. We also do a little Old Gold show on the YouTube, and then C. Bartley Rivals on Twitter, I think. But appreciate you having me on. You guys do great work. Always fun to watch and hang out.
Yep. So appreciate you coming on. And yeah, I think this was a good show. Hour and a half for anybody that's watching the next day. I hope you enjoy on your way to work or whatever it is. So make sure to like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications on the way out, and we will be back with an Oregon preview shortly, and then we will be live after the Oregon game. I believe it is a 3 p.m. Eastern time tip Saturday, where Purdue is looking to extend their win streak to 7 in a row and get to 7-1 in Big Ten play. So we will be live after the game. Tune into that. Appreciate everybody tuning in.